Hey guys, welcome back to Big Shoulders, the video podcast about Chicago and beyond. Today we have a guest, a returning guest, one of my favorite Chicagoans ever, one of the rising stars of Chicago influencers, and just overall, just one of the baddest bitches I've ever met. She is Chicago's Queen of Jordan. Welcome, Sara Faddah, back to the pod.
Ah, that is a great intro. I'm gonna steal that next time
No,
someone asks
yeah,
me
no,
to.
exactly.
I'm gonna be
Chicago.
like
That
that
hit me
one.
on my drive home from work today, and I'm like, yeah, maybe she'll be cool with that.
I
But
like
no,
that. That's a
thanks,
good one.
thanks for coming on, Sara. Um,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
oh no, absolutely. You guys are two of my favorites. I guess to kind of begin, I want to sort of, for those that aren't familiar with you, aren't familiar with 77 Flavors. Um, you are, of course, an immigrant to Chicago. You are adding
Mhm.
to the beauty, the wonder, the culture, the everything that is great and continually growing and great about Chicago. Can you kind of bring us to, I guess, the start? Where does your connection and I guess the journey to Chicago and your becoming a Chicagoan, where does that start? Because you're like we mentioned, you're originally from Jordan, right?
It's- Yeah, so actually, my dad lived in Chicago in the 70s. He went to Southern Illinois, Carbondale for college, and then my uncle was living out here. My dad's family left Palestine during the war, and so in the 60s, in the late 60s, and so his brother, his older brother, moved out here. And a few years later, he moved here, went to college. At the age of like 16 or 17, he was like a taxi cab driver in the city, saved enough money to go to college, went to Southern and then after he graduated, he moved back to the city, lived with my uncle, and then came back to Jordan, met my mom, a decade or so later, and then he passed in 2001. So I was still pretty young, um, and from that time on, my uncle, who my dad lived with, kind of took us in, not literally, but like he just wanted to be like a father figure in our life. And so every summer and every winter during our school break, we would come to the city. He lived here, and so um eventually he moved to Bridgeview, which if you are familiar with
Oh yeah,
Chicagoland area, that's like where all of the Arabs are. If you want
right, right.
want to meet an Arab, go to Bridgeview. So he lived there for a while, and then before he passed, he moved to Tinley Park, which is also close to Orland Park, which is another like big hub for Arab Americans. And so I spent the entirety of my childhood until high school coming here for 3 months in the summer and 3 weeks in the winter. So um, I thought I was super familiar. I thought I was like, this is great. I know Chicago. I When I decided to go to college, I was like, I want to go somewhere where I can connect with my dad, and kind of like have that connection with him because he passed when I was so young and I have so limited memories. And so I went to Illinois State, which was the closest. I did not want to go all the way south. I wanted to be closer to the city. So I was like, Illinois State will have to do.
Sure.
And then after I graduated, I moved to Mexico for a couple of years and then I came back and I've been here since. Um, and I just loved it. I mean, I always loved it, but
Sure.
my love for it now is like so much deeper. Yeah, that's kind of how we got started.
That's an awesome story. That's a great immigrant story, and that's one of the things that
Yeah,
I don't think I know anybody in the city who doesn't have that in their family, and it's one of the things that just adds to the richness of Chicago. I I I'm always it makes me so happy when I'll meet people. Like I've met people from Europe, from Australia, from places like New York that will have like a layover in Chicago, or
right.
they'll be here on a business trip, and they'll take some time out of their schedule to walk around the Loop or the lake somewhere downtown.
Hmm.
And some of them will get bold and even hop on the L and go into to the neighborhoods, and they're
Yeah,
always so pleasantly surprised at how diverse and culturally rich
right.
Chicago is, that you can
Yeah,
find almost any food from around the globe in our city. And it's just, again, we as Chicagoans, me and Dario have talked about this, how we are constantly fighting this battle with with media deciding or trying to
Mhm.
decide for us what we are. And then when people actually get, feet on the ground and they experience us, it's just such a pleasant surprise. So that's
Yeah,
always fun.
for
But
sure.
that's now in terms of, so you have your father's connection, your uncle, going to school here. Obviously, you spent a couple times in Mexico, which is awesome. I taught down there for a while.
Oh,
Where in
really?
Mexico? Where in Mexico did you live?
I was in central Mexico in a city called Querétaro. It's like 3 hours north of Mexico City,
Okay.
which is absolutely beautiful. It's surrounded by those what they call magic towns. They're all part of the like they're all UNESCO
Oh, World
heritage
Heritage Site.
sites.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're like the most beautiful, actually magical towns. Like they're just so gorgeous. There's so much color and so much history in those towns. Most of them are colonial, obviously,
Right.
because the Spaniards came and took over. But um, you still experience that like indigenous culture in them because they're just so small, and the people that still live there have lived there for I mean, centuries. Their families have been
Right.
there.
I
Yeah,
love Mexico.
me
I
too.
there when I did, and I've been there so many times, and I still have not set foot in Mexico City. I want to go to
Uh,
Oaxaca. There's so many places in Mexico that I want to go. It's
yeah,
one of my favorite places in the world to visit. That's so cool
same.
that you live
Same.
there.
I always tell people, I'm like, Mexican culture is the closest to Arabic culture in the West. It is so
Really?
similar, and
Okay.
yeah, so I felt so immediately at home, and that's why I just loved it so much. And I obviously most of the time people don't assume I'm Arab. People think I'm Mexican or like some sort of like Latin
Sure.
descent, and I'm like, I mean, I get it, like, and I connect with that. So, like, if I wasn't gonna be Arab, the next best thing would be Mexican for me personally. That's what
Right.
I would want it to be.
Well,
So,
it's interesting that you mentioned that because I growing up in Chicago, like one of my best friends, in Chicago, his family's Moroccan, and so it was through him that I really got exposure to various Arab cultures, where I
mm,
sort of learned about Islam and those things. And there's a warmth. I don't know how many people there are familiar with Arab hospitality, but you
right,
talk about the parallels between Arab and Mexican culture, and you're absolutely right. There's an incredible warmth there. I have I've worked for Arab families. I've had Arab clients, and I've also had obviously Latin and Mexican clients, and there is the pride that both cultures take in hospitality, in food, in
mhm,
I would say we all know that one of the best and most intimate ways to experience the culture is through food. I mean, so much of your
yeah,
work in on 77 flavors and is part of that. But
right.
Arabs and Mexicans take it to another level. Like it's inextricably linked. You're going over to an Arab house or a Mexican house. You're going to eat.
You're eating for days. Yeah,
It's yeah, and not only you're going to eat while you're there, mom is going to pack up something for you to send home. Like it's I love it. The warmth and the food is killer. Today is actually my birthday, and I was asked,
today's your birthday.
where. Yes, today is yes
Why are you working on your birthday?
because I love this. This to me this is not work at all. Like this is pleasure for me. But I was asked, hey, where do you want to go to dinner? And I was like, we're doing Lebanese. I've
Yeah,
been I've been
so
doubling down.
good.
Oh my god, I had been somewhat familiar with Lebanese food, like Lebanese, Persian, Moroccan food,
What's
but
funny is you look Lebanese.
well, it's so funny because I've got a spot that I go to, and
Mm,
uh, the first few times I walked in, the staff spoke to me and say, I mean, it might have something to do with the jacket and the necklace and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's literally like going to your best friend's house, like, and his mom is cooking. Like, it's
yeah,
so authentic. It's so real. It's so warm, and the food is just killer. Like, I don't
yeah.
think I've had an Arab cuisine yet that I was like, oh, no more of that. It's like, please, please, can we? We'll
Okay,
make
next
this.
time
Let's
you're in
let's do this.
Chicago, I'm taking you to my favorite Jordanian restaurant. next time
Yes,
you're here.
I know that one of the last times you and Dario were on, you had told me some places, and I still haven't been able to get to them. But no, for
It's a
sure.
hike. Because
Yeah,
the best restaurants are in Bridgeview, so you're
sure,
driving at least an hour outside of the
sure.
city to get to them, but
Yeah,
it's worth it. You make
yeah.
a whole
I
day
know
of it.
that,
You go grocery shopping, you get your spices, you get your
right.
coffee, and then
And
yeah, the
that's
whole day.
another thing that I really in terms of Arabic culture where I'm like, okay, these are my people. Was the coffee because
Mhm.
I grew up, I'm half German on my father's side, and they're intense coffee drinkers.
Yeah.
My mom's Mediterranean, and I didn't realize how strong a coffee culture so many Arabic
Oh my
communities.
God.
I was like, wow! I'm
Super.
like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Coffee and tea. I feel like
Yeah,
coffee was is part of like our native uh culture, and then tea
right,
came when the British came. So they brought over the tea and we loved it. We kept it. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, the tea part I experienced acutely through my friend whose mother and half of his family are Moroccan, and I remember the
Mhm.
first time I went over to his house after a class, and like she blended the tea herself. Like she had various bags of various teas and herbs, made the tea, blended it, and had everything. It was like in an urn with like a tray.
Yeah.
It was so I'm like, and I was like, oh, this is it's not just pour tea in a cup and off you
Right.
go. Like it was like a whole to do. It was awesome.
Yeah, like if my grandmother saw someone microwaving a thing of water to make tea, like a mug of water to make tea, she would have a heart attack.
Right, right.
It's like a
There's
whole thing. Like yeah.
No, yeah, the tea and coffee culture from Arabia is awesome.
Yeah.
There's a new spot actually that I discovered in my old neighborhood of Lincoln Square on the north side, right on the strip there of Lincoln Square, down from where the Chicago Brauhaus used to be.
Mhm.
There's a place called Oromo Cafe, this Turkish.
Oh yeah, I have heard of it. I haven't been yet, but I've heard of that.
Oh, it's great. It's a great
Yeah.
atmosphere. The coffee is incredible. That's another one to add to your list. But yeah, for my birthday, we're doing Lebanese. It was I didn't have to think twice about it. But getting back to you and your growth, your journey in Chicago. What over time? What are some things about Chicago that maybe and it could be Chicago and it could be American. What are things that maybe you didn't quite understand? Are there things about Chicago that have come to grow on you over time? Are there
Mm.
things that you still can't get used to? Um, yeah, I'm always curious because those of us that are sort of born inside the beast, we have every city, every city culture has its ups and its downs, its strengths and its weaknesses. What, as someone who obviously you had exposure as a kid growing up, but what are some insights that you might be able to share to people that maybe aren't from Chicago, or people, or even people who are Chicagoans? I find that sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times, people who are immigrants to a place tend to appreciate it better than the
Mhm.
people that were born into it. Not always, but I like those perspectives. Are there things about Chicago, for better or for worse, that you think that people should know about? That because you guys are such ambassadors for the city. I'm just curious if there's anything
Yeah. There's
there.
so many things. I think if I were to think back to like when I first got here, um, this is way bigger of a like I grew up in a city, but this is a city. You know what I mean? Like I grew up the Jordan is 11 million people. The city of Chicago is almost 3. So this was like a huge shift for me in terms of how big the city was and how much um like it is easy to stay in your bubble if you choose to, and how
Right,
you shouldn't, right? Like in within Jordan, there isn't really like you can't within Amman, which is the city I grew up in, there isn't like if I go from neighborhood to neighborhood, I'm not like experiencing an entirely different culture.
right,
But in Chicago, you can experience completely different cultures just by step like driving 10 minutes, which
right.
is was such an an odd thing for me. Because I mean, there aren't immigrants in Jordan. I mean, yes, there are. There's immigrants from Palestine, Syria, Iraq, like those countries that are a result of war around
Right.
us. But generally, it's the same, very similar culture. Our language is the same. Um, Most of the time, the religion is the same, and so the food is very similar, if not the same. So the variations aren't like as crazy as to think of like an Irish neighborhood
Right.
to a Mexican neighborhood to a German neighborhood. Like that is what was probably the most interesting thing for me because like I love to travel already. Like that was a big thing for me, and so be able to experience so many cultures in one place and it's so accessible was just super fascinating. That was I'd never experienced that before. Um, and the food, I mean, I hadn't had an avocado until I moved to
Oh
Chicago.
wow, really? Oh, oh, avocados
Don't
are
grow and they
best.
don't grow there, and so like I
Right.
just never. I might have had one like after I learned what an avocado was. I like went to Lebanon and they make this avocado shake, but like I'd never ordered one before because I was like I don't know what like I'd never experienced that, so I just didn't until I was like maybe in high school, um, and so it's a lot of like food things, a lot of cultural things, and like navigating a city that's so diverse. Um, like can be intimidating at first because I had to learn so much about other people's culture. And one thing is like I told this to my friend one time and she was kind of shocked. I was like, as an immigrant, I never knew that I was brown until I moved here.
Mm,
No one has ever told me that I was brown. So like I moved here and now I'm like this entire different category of a person. So like I have to
mm,
navigate how to live life in this category that
mm.
other people have placed you into. But then
Right.
you're also looking at other people within that same category and you're like, okay, what are our similarities? What are our differences? Like I'm trying to understand this new race dynamic that just did not exist for me ever before.
Right.
Because when I came as a kid, I was never really exposed to that. I mean,
Right.
I was
Right.
so young, I just didn't experience it. And so that was huge for me because the other brown people that were around me were usually Mexican, and I
Right.
hadn't been to Mexico. I didn't speak the language, so like you know what I mean. So like that kind of thing was super. It took time to adjust to and to learn
Right.
because how you have to be like intentional about learning other people and how they came to be in this city in this country in general, and then
Right.
like where I fit now. Um, because I'd never faced racism until I moved here.
Well, that makes total that you're not the first friend that I've had that has explained that to me because if you're coming from a place where everyone is you,
Yeah,
it's just sort of the default that we're just us. You know,
I'd experienced
everyone is Arab
colorism
or everyone is
before.
Korean or
Yeah,
everyone is Nigerian or whatever, and then you come to a place where it's like, oh wait, now we have a bunch of differences and we these needs to categorize things and yeah, I mean, I remember being in junior high and I had a ton of friends that were Laotian refugees
mm,
and dealing like we sort of struck up just fast friendships. For whatever reason, they took to me, I took to them. They would tutor me in math, I would help them with English and grammar. And I remember at times just kids for whatever reason, white and black, just giving these kids a hard time because they
mm,
had big accents, they were different, and all of that. And it at a very early age, I just was like, okay, but why?
right.
He's my friend. If you gave him a chance, he would be your friend. Why do these things matter? And so yeah, it's
Right.
because at the same time, the differences are beautiful. Everybody brings their culture. People bring their food. They bring their spices. They bring their tapestries. Like those are the great, beautiful parts that help
Yeah.
us build this vibrant culture. Say, in Chicago. But unfortunately, there is the other side of that, which you know bums me out. So I'm sorry that
Right.
you or anybody has to deal with that because uh, we should be appreciating differences. Or just do we even call them differences? Just the uniqueness of people and their culture. Like, can we just
Yeah.
appreciate it? It's
Right.
just
I will say, I like Chicago is one of the cities where I experienced the least amount of racism where I went to college, Illinois State, is a very small town. It's called
Right.
Bloomington Normal. They're sister towns, super tiny. That was the first time that I learned, and this is coming from a place of a lot of privilege. That was the first time I learned that people aren't like born with passports. Like I learned like people had never left the country. That people
Right.
hadn't been to Chicago, which was so shocking to me. Again, place of privilege because I my family loved to travel and so I got to travel as a kid.
Right.
And so I started meeting people that have never met an Arab before. They've never
Sure.
seen like anyone from where I was from. And so I understand their certain reactions and like their thoughts. I mean, the first my first class, I told someone where I was from, and he was like, "So if you get mad, are you gonna blow me up?" Like that was
Oh,
and
geez.
I was so confused. I was like, I actually have no idea what you mean. And then, I mean, my accent has changed significantly and intentionally, which now I'm like, I wish I didn't hadn't done that, but it's just it was like a quick thing that I worked on, like made sure that I was pronouncing things the way so I'm not knowing that I still look like I'm not from here. People are still gonna ask me where you're from, but
Right.
um,
Yeah.
Chicago was the least place that I experienced that because there's so many people that look like me.
Right. Yeah.
So
It's
right,
harder to I'm not impossible, but it's harder to be bigoted when you kind of grow up with every shade, creed, and color.
yeah,
Which again, it's why I love the city so much. It's what I love
yeah,
about. It's one of my favorite parts of sort of the American tapestry, as I like to call it.
mhm,
Interesting that you talk about Bloomington Normal. My one of my cousins, she and her husband. Um, their kids uh, are very much Chicago kids. Now they're three very white kids.
mhm,
They're Polish and Slavic, but they're total Chicago kids. And every single one of their friends, like it's that again, it's that tapestry. It's sort of that rainbow of people. They recently, about a year or two ago, moved to Bloomington Normal because my
mhm.
cousin ended up becoming dean of the nursing school she graduated from. We're so proud of her. She's a super
That's
smart,
amazing.
yeah, woman.
Yeah,
And so she got this opportunity and she couldn't really say no. So, they packed up and they left the city. They were out in Tri Taylor, not exactly the most lily white neighborhood in
right.
Chicago. And, again, they're dedicated to making sure that their
Mhm.
kids are properly acculturated. Well, then they moved south to, Bloomington Normal. And it's so funny. Uh, Oliver, her son, her eldest son, they were there 2 days. And he leans over to his mom, my cousin, and said, "Hey, Ma, why are there only white people here?" And it blew them away because they grew up with everyone. And then,
Mhm.
they're there now. And and it kind of broke her heart. She's like, "Well, remember, honey, people are people. And, we're going to make friends here too." But it was an adjustment for the kids to
Right.
be in a place that was more monoethnic, monoracial. And,
Yeah.
that's, again, and this is coming from white kids that are from Chicago. So that
Right.
it's the things that we take for granted. I think as Chicagoans, you go out and sort of
For
explore the
sure.
world. It's yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
interesting.
I could probably like throw a rock and eat at like 50 different cuisines
Oh,
within like a 2 mile radius.
right,
Yeah,
right.
like which you don't really get. And
Well, we were
I
we
don't
were talking about the South
realize,
Loop. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
like no, I'm just like people don't realize how big of a city Chicago is and how diverse it is. My friend lives in Seattle. She's like my childhood best friend. And she's like, I didn't know Chicago had beaches. I was like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah. No, I
great
remember the first
part of it,
time I
like,
brought some nieces and nephews from Cali to Chicago, and we were, how like if you're flying into O'Hare, you kind of go over
yeah.
the lake and loop around.
Mhm.
And one of my nephews looked out. He's like, "Are we near an ocean?" I'm like, "I know
They
you're
have
better
failed
educated
you.
than that."
Yeah.
But no, they were shocked because they saw the lakefront, they saw the beaches. I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah, that's North Avenue Beach, and that's this beach." And they were just really shocked. I mean, I'm like, "Yeah, we're gonna go downtown and we're gonna go to the beach," and they were just like, "Oh." I'm like, "Yeah, California is not the only place with beaches, son." Um,
Literally.
so that's again the continual pleasant surprises that people have
Yeah.
when they give our city a chance. They don't just
Right.
fly over. It just makes my
Yeah.
my heart swell. And
I
I
um I s- oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
I was gonna say I saw a bunch of influencers post while they were here for the DNC, and they were like shocked that Chicago is such a nice, clean city.
Right,
What do
right.
you mean?
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like people say, where are the cleanest places in the world that you've lived? Because like you, I like to travel, and I've been fortunate enough to live in different places. And the three cleanest places I've ever lived in the world are Japan, Switzerland, and the
Mm,
city of Chicago. And
yeah.
people are like, Chicago? It's like, isn't it gritty? I'm like, it is. They said, but we run a tight ship. Like
Yeah.
that's anybody that I've ever brought in, friend or family, to the city. They're just like, I could eat off the sidewalk. I'm like, you literally could. You literally could.
Mm.
It's
Probably
again
shouldn't, but you
another
can.
point of pride.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No.
sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, I said I love that.
Yeah, for sure. We
Yeah.
it's every city has its pluses and minuses, but cleanliness is not an issue for Chicago, so
Sure.
pretty great. One of the things that's been really cool to watch with you and Dario, and there's others that is, and we've discussed this on previous pods, that it feels like, and again, Chicago has been really good at just sort of minding its own business. I feel like
Mhm.
Chicago historically, whereas LA and New York are really good at fostering their own culture, but then turning around and telling the world how great they are. Chicago, it seems like, at least for most of my life, we just sort of focus inward. We do our thing. We talk amongst ourselves. We eat among ourselves. We play among ourselves, and that's kind of we just do that. I Something occurred maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and you guys are part of this wave that of influencers of people that have got online. It's 77 flavors of Chicago. It's Sherman Dilla Thomas, who is Chicago's urban historian. It's the guys from Eat Local. Also,
Mhm.
um, number no was it
Number
number
six
three
with cheese.
number yeah, yes, number three with the cheese. Those fellas, the people that have risen up and really kind of put Chicago on the map. I was worried. I'm like, oh, this is cool. These folks are doing good work. Will it last? And here we are, about 6 years in, and it's only getting stronger. And
Yeah.
the exhibit that all of you guys have put for Chicago to the world has just been so cool. And I'm so happy to see that it wasn't just a quick trend, that
Right.
people are really blown away that there's this place in the middle of the country that is a cosmopolitan major metropolis
Mhm.
with business and culture and skyscrapers and beaches like we mentioned before, and every cuisine literally under the sun. It's so fun to see you guys do these things. Um, where do you think it's going? Where would you like it to go? Like, obviously, you guys are so locked in on history and culture. I think I've learned more from you guys and from people like Dilla about Chicago history than I ever did in school. And and you guys make it so fun. Like, do you guys see? I don't know. It's You guys are so free in what you're able to do, but like, have you guys ever been offered like from like PBS or like a Discovery Channel thing? I feel like you guys would be just perfect for something like that. Is that something you're interested in?
For sure. Who's gonna say no to a show?
Right.
If Discovery Channel came and was like, "Do you want this show?" I'm not be like, no. But honestly, where do I see it going? I feel like what's crazy is that we've been doing this for almost 4 years.
Right.
We've released one episode every Monday, and we have not run out of things to talk about.
Oh
That
yeah.
is like, you know what I mean? And we're just doing history. Like we're just doing stories from history. To
Right.
think that so much has happened in this city that has like changed the direction that the country went in
Oh yeah.
and the world really, that it influenced so much of what has happened around the US, around the world, around our neighboring countries, that we can still keep going 4
Mhm.
years later is kind of crazy. And so I feel like it's just up from here. I don't think it's going to end. I hope that
Right.
we still get to do it as long as people listen and engage. We'll keep doing it, obviously. Um, but I mean, we never like we when we started. I know you know this, but it wasn't meant to be like anything. We just did a date
Right.
night, like, and
Right.
then
Right.
people were so hungry for positive news about Chicago,
Yes.
for something good that
Yeah.
that was like it was kind of like lightning in a bottle. Like we just found how has no one spent time to talk about the positive things that are happening in the city? So
Right.
I feel like there's still a market for that. People
No,
love to
there
hear.
definitely is, because I remember
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how I found you guys, but I when I did find you guys, it was, everything was still kind of locked down. It was COVID times,
Mhm.
and obviously, those that have watched the show, I split time between Chicago and LA. I'm an aspiring filmmaker, and an actor, and so uh, certain things I just have to be out on the coast for.
Right.
But yeah, as I've told other people, I'm like, you can take you can take the guy out of Chicago. You can't take the Chicago out of the guy.
For
You
sure.
can't do it. And you guys, in a time where it's like, I'm locked down in California, nobody knows what's going to happen. 2 weeks became 2 months and became a year. And I found you guys just literally sitting on your couch talking
Yeah.
about, like, I don't know if it was Ashland or if it was Armour Square, like one of our great, community centers in Chicago. And it was like I was in your living room with you. You guys were so warm, and there was so much love and affection that you guys had for every neighborhood. And then you guys would talk about the place where you ate or had takeout from. And it's one of those things where I needed it in that time because
Yeah.
things were so uncertain. We were so locked down. But the Chicagoan in me was like, wait, it's more than that. These folks
Right.
are talking about the greatness, the goodness, the cultural richness of my city. And it occurred to me, like, unless I'm in the city, I'm talking with other Chicagoans, or I happen to be watching WTTW, you know, I don't get that. And
Right.
I'm
There's
like, that,
nothing about Chicago.
yeah, it's always New York, like New York and LA, especially through entertainment, through film.
Right.
Like there's this massive canon of film and filmmakers that are either from places like New York or LA that feature their city as a character, and there isn't as much of that for Chicago.
Yeah.
There are
Sure.
glimpses. We have Blues Brothers, we have Thief by Michael Mann, we have obviously the John Hughes films.
Mhm.
There's smaller movies like Cooley High. There's one called Rogers Park, which I haven't watched yet that I want to check out. I didn't even
I
know
have
that.
never heard of that. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, there's a couple indies set in Chicago neighborhoods
Mm,
that are free on Tubi. I will send them to you guys because
good
I
to
know
know.
you guys would appreciate it. Maybe we could do a review. I do a film review channel as well. Maybe we could do some of the Chicago cinema at some point.
Yeah.
But Chicago to me, and I tell my Cali family this. They're like, how is this not a bigger? Because they come in every year. How
Mhm.
is this not a bigger thing? And I call Chicago the last discovery of America, because the coasts are so good at and again, they have their great cultures as well. They have their things, their flavors to offer. Chicago is sort of, I feel like, just learning that we can uh, point our voice outward from the
Mhm.
city. We know how dope we are, of course, but now it's time that the world knows. And
Yeah.
if I can be a part of that in film, I'm going to try. I've got
You know
so
what my
many.
dream
What's that?
my dream TV show or movie to be made about Chicago?
What's
I feel
that?
like you've seen me post this on our stories. I fantasize about a movie set between 1880 and
Yes.
1920. Like, I want
Oh my God,
a
yes.
Gilded Age, like, timepiece about Chicago. I want
Yes.
World's Fairs. I
Yes.
want, like, the
1893.
Dree House mansions. Like, I just wanna see it so bad.
Right.
Just, I'm like, we have so much. There's so
Oh,
much
yeah.
history in those 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
You could make a 10 season series. Like,
Right.
it could go on forever. I don't have the skill to write for TV or the money to fund a project. Those are my only two things that are stopping me, which I feel like are critical for
Right.
making a TV show. But
Well, I
if
think. I really, again, speaking, we're talking about like hoping that a moment is more than just a moment and more than just a fad. I really do think there has been a seismic shift in interest and appreciation for Chicago because of shows like The Bear. I remember watching the first season of that show, and obviously the show itself is just so incredibly well written. It does such a great job at representing all of the levels and classes and flavors and ethnicities of Chicago. Uh, and it's not a flash in the pan. And so many people now are coming to Chicago because of that show, and people are realizing, wow, there's, to your point, there's so much here. I would love to see, I would go a step further with your idea. I'd start maybe right before the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, so we can see what it
Even better.
was, see the city
Yeah.
completely leveled and then reborn. But to your point, and you and Dario pointed this out, how basically from the point that we rebuild from that fire, we are just rocking and rolling like
Yeah.
straight through into the early 20th century. And like you said, that sort of that gilded age, the architecture, just the big ideas and the big dreams and things that were going on. I hope that this Devil in a White City movie does it justice, because I think if that's done well, I think it helps, folks like you
Right.
and me that want to see more of that, because we've barely touched the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg historically,
Totally.
culturally in this town. There's just so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, without a doubt. No, I'm
I need next season of HBO's Gilded Age to be in Chicago.
right. Oh
They should
no,
just do it.
that would be great. That would be great.
That'd be amazing.
Chicagoans are slowly making their way into these writers' rooms, and
Yeah.
that does seem to be making the difference. We have The Bear, we have The Chi on Showtime, which I believe is now Paramount Plus. One of a show that I don't know if you and Dario have watched. It went from one network to another, and
Mm.
sadly only went 3 seasons, but those 3 seasons are glorious. Oh my God. It's a show called Southside. It started
I
on
did see it.
okay. It started
It
on
was
Comedy
good.
Central and then went over to HBO
Didn't
Max.
it go to HBO? Yeah.
Yeah, and so they finished out 2 seasons there. And it's written by, starring, and produced by Chicago folks from the South Side.
Right.
And it is some of the best comedy I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, whether you're from Chicago or not, there's stuff you're going to enjoy.
Yeah.
But the cultural specificity of Chicago, of the South Side, that's built into this show was such a treat to watch. Obviously it's a largely African American cast and production and writers, and so that's so apparent and deep in the
Yeah.
story and the aesthetics of the show. It was like a warm blanket watching every show, and there'd be touching moments. There's be moments where
Right.
your sides are busting because you're laughing so hard. Every season wraps up with something that's really sort of elevated and culturally unique. It's great stuff. If you and Dario need a new show, I cannot recommend that show enough. It really is a masterpiece. I wish it would have got more recognition when it was,
Yeah.
because it's so authentically Chicago, and just a great piece of television on top of it.
Okay.
I get accused of like, oh, you just like it because it's Chicago. I'm like, no, if it sucked, I would say, please don't watch this,
Right.
because I don't want the city to be uh, misconstrued. But no, it's an absolute gem. So, and all of you out there, I think all 3 seasons are on Max now. So
Yeah.
we're seeing. But no, you guys have done great work, and I do think that's probably, there's such a shift going on. Being sort of really aware and plugged in of what's going on in entertainment. I hear you say stuff like, yeah, I wish we could do historical period pieces about Chicago. I think it's coming, because for as many advantages as there were to sort of the old studio system, streaming and just the democratization of filmmaking and content making that's come with technology, it's really changing the game. I know a lot of people are scared, but I think that ultimately what's going to be left over when the dust settles is it's going to be people who are really in this for the love of the game and
Right.
just the people that are the real passionate ones making these projects that I think are going to lead to the something new, and that you can
Right.
have all this great Chicago content. You can have all of this great, um, POC content, whatever it might be. This is only going to grow because we have the technology at our backs. That's just
Right.
my two
And
cents.
there's that new studio that's opening, I think, soon.
Yes, it's somewhere near South Shore, South Side, South Loop. Um,
I thought it was almost on the west side. Maybe I'm mistaken.
oh, you
It's
know what? Yeah, I'm confused. I think I might. Well, there's Cinespace,
but
which
that's been around for a while. There's a new
yeah,
studio opening. Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, there's yeah. Let me look it up here. So there's this is,
Yeah, they bought a huge, like, abandoned building, and they've been working on it for a couple of years. Um, and I think it's meant to open soon, which would be super exciting because that hopefully having a whole new space to make shows in or movies in
well,
would
that's
be
something too. And not to, I'll stop talking about myself here, but just brought it up. Sorry.
then you can move back to Chicago and you don't have to be in LA.
Right? No, exactly. Like
So,
this is the thing is it's um because I talk to other Chicago artists in LA. We talk about this, and it's everyone has to leave to try to make their mark, or that used to be the case.
right.
Chicago and Illinois is coming back around. We allowed, as a city and as a state, a bunch of tax credits to expire, and when that happened, we lost a lot of what had been growing. We've always had films shot and produced in Chicago, but we were really rocking and rolling when Transformers came to town, and for whatever reason, a bunch of tax credits had been allowed to expire. We kept the Chicago shows, Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, but not as much going on. And I
Right.
think that we've got a new generation of elected officials and politicians coming up that kind of understand how cool we are. It's like, yeah, you can't make a Chicago show shooting the exteriors in Chicago and then shooting the interior in some studio in LA. It's like that
Yeah.
you can't do that anymore. We're all about authenticity now.
Mhm.
And yeah, we have these studios that are being built in Chicago. We need to sweeten the pot for productions and make it
Yeah.
easier for them to shoot in Chicago, tell Chicago stories in ways that, like Toronto and Vancouver, have been rocking and rolling for over 30 years now with
Right.
American productions. It's like we could bring that home. And if we did
Yeah.
that, people might look around and see, oh, wait, you guys have got all this. This is interesting. Let's do this. So that's my hope, but I'm with
Can't
you.
wait.
Yeah. So let's see. I don't know. I don't want to keep you too much longer. You've been so generous with your time.
No, it's so
What
fun.
I guess to wrap up, what
Mhm.
are maybe you can give us refresh my memory and the viewers. What are some Jordanian food gems in the Chicagoland area, and what are some
Mm.
things? What are some of the things that you and Dario have encountered? Be they restaurants, cultural sites, just whatever that more people need to know about. If you were to make just off the top of your head some quick recommendations for people why they should come to Chicago, what they should experience in Chicago, all that good stuff.
Good questions. I'm gonna go Arabic food in general because there's
Let's
not
do it.
too many Jordanian specific, but
Sure.
Al Bawadi is one of my favorite Jordanian restaurants, and they make
Can you
like
say that again?
traditional Al Bawadi.
El Bouadi, okay.
Yeah. They have 2 locations, one in Bridgeview, one in Niles, and they make, like, traditional meals that we would have at home. So, you're not just eating, like,
Right.
shawarma or something. You know what I mean? Like, our street food, you're eating actual, like, full rice meals.
Okay.
I love in Andersonville, there's a restaurant that's cash only. It's called, uh,
Yes,
Lebanese
I
Tree
know.
or
Yeah, I
something.
know that.
Yeah.
Yes, that place is amazing.
It's phenomenal. It's like a
Yes.
good to-go sandwich kind of place. Um, I do love going up to, um, Devon. There's
Yes, Javon
so
is great.
many mhm. There's so many, um, I mean, it's the most diverse zip code in the country, so you can imagine how much food you can get from different
Right.
countries. But there's a bunch of Arabic restaurants, and then there's one, um, Kababi is Persian, which is super close in terms of like how we make our food, the
Right.
Arabs, but they have phenomenal food. Like their cranberry rice or their cherry rice is like one of the best things I've ever had. Um, let's see, where else? Honestly, I make a lot of the stuff at home, so every time someone's like,
Sure.
"What's a good recommendation?" I'm like, my house.
Well, yeah, that's sort of
Um,
like it's funny you say that half my family is Filipino, and there are
yeah.
Filipino restaurants in Chicago. Actually, has the only Filipino Michelin star
Michelin.
rated restaurant,
Mhm.
Kasama, and it's so good that it actually gets my Filipino family out for Filipino
Oh,
food.
good.
To your point, most of the best Filipino food is just made at home,
In my house, yeah.
but it's these restaurants are again like the place that I'm going to for Lebanese. It feels like you're going to someone's house. Like you're not
Right.
getting they're not trying to Americanize or Westernize. It's
Yeah.
like this is what we eat. This is for you, and it's awesome.
If you want like a more high-end experience, a new place opened up probably like a year ago called Sifr, Sifr. They make Middle Eastern food, but it's a little bit fancier. So if you want that like sit down experience, really, really good. I think they just won a James Beard, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice.
So we went there and that was really good. They make the bread fresh in the like bread oven in front of you. It was so good. But for places that people must see, oh, that's so hard. I feel like there's so much to see. But like, let's say you're coming to visit, you're staying near downtown. I feel like it's so easy to just get on the red line and go down to Chinatown or down to Pilsen.
Hmm.
Um, it's so close. I mean, you can experience two entirely different cultures while you're there.
Yes.
There's so much great food in Logan Square. I feel
Oh, I love
like it
Logan Square so much.
warrants a visit. Yeah, if you love beer, there's a ton of breweries up there that make just really cool, innovative beer. Um, you have to hit the lakefront, even if it's cold. I don't care.
Right.
Just
Oh
go
yeah.
walk the lakefront. Um, what else? I mean, I love the small house museums. Like I love the Glessner House. I love the
Mm,
Dree House,
sure.
where you can. It's like fully staged as a home from the period that it was built in, and it's just such a cool, unique experience.
Right.
And they're smaller museums, so people tend to like skip over them
Right.
because you're not. I mean, if you don't want to spend 5 hours at a museum, this is a perfect place to go spend an hour, and then you're still in like downtownish area. You can just leave and go for lunch. Um, there's a ton of great galleries in Pilsen that feature
Yeah.
a ton
Yeah.
of great Chicago-based artists, and yeah, I mean, I have a million recommendations. Check out our Instagram page.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
I love
No.
it all.
Those are
It's so hard for
great.
me to pick. Yeah,
No, and that's the thing. It really is. It's an unfair question because it's kind of like choosing between your
yeah,
children. It's just
I
like
agree.
there's so much. But
Yeah,
you talk about how you can go 10 minutes and experience so many cultures. I like to start in a place like Greektown, which is just north of
right.
UIC, and I can walk 10 to 15 minutes, and then I can go from Greektown to Little Italy to
Yep,
Pilsen for Mexican.
yep.
If I keep walking, I can end up in Chinatown. Before and then after walking through what is it? Old Chinatown. I think it's you hit 26th Street. You can hit Rico Benny's and get an Italian breaded steak
Right.
sandwich. It's We're really spoiled, Sarah, aren't we?
Yeah, super, super. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for coming on. I thank you for the conversation and the
Yeah, thanks for
insights
having
and
me.
sharing your story. You are one of the most interesting people I think I've ever met in Chicago. I love the work that you and Dario do. I hope
Thanks.
it's to your point. There's so much to excavate that you could really spend a
Yeah,
lifetime in Chicago, and I know you guys are going
absolutely.
to continue to wow us, but. Thank you for what you do. Thank you
Yeah,
for who you are, and thank you for your time, Sarah.
thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, wait a minute! I almost forgot. Oh, I almost
Mm.
forgot my arbitrary Chicago questions. I'm trying to get better at
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Anytime
Okay.
that I talk to people, and I sometimes I forget completely. But I know we did this when it was you and Dario. But just in case anything's changed, I want to put to you my three arbitrary Chicago questions. And
Okay.
the first one is deep dish or tavern style?
Tavern style.
Yes. Okay, 2, Cubs or Sox?
Ooh, that one's really hard for me. Okay, here's the thing. Cubs because Dario is a Cubs fan, but I do love the Sox as an organ. Like we've worked with the Sox recently, and I just love
Right.
who they are.
Sure.
So it's really hard for me. I'm a Chicago sports fan.
See, that's
So
how it is for me.
whatever
Like,
Chicago
I'm a
team is
big
playing,
Sox
that's who I
fan.
support.
My
Yeah,
family's Cubs, but I don't hate the Cubs. Like, it's like if
right.
someone get invited to a game, I'm going. But no, I'm with you.
Yeah,
Like, whoever's winning in Chicago, let's support
yes.
them.
I'm supporting.
And then the
Yep.
last one, Coke or Pepsi?
Oh, Coke.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean,
also right now, neither.
okay.
But
No, right. No, of course, understood, understood. But
if I were
no,
to pick, it's a crisp Diet Coke.
yes, no, no. Diet
Freshness.
Coke. Yeah, it's Diet Coke. If I do have an addiction, it's Diet Coke, without a
I
doubt.
think they still put Coke in it. They must because it doesn't explain. Like that's the only
Yeah,
that's the
why do
only
I need it
explanation
all
of
the
why it's
time,
so
right?
good. Yeah. Why do I think about it all the time?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like whether, and then if I get like a fountain Coke,
Oh
oh,
my god.
it's just forget it. Just jack me in. Well, anyways, I will let you go, Sarah. Thank you for everything. Um,
Thank you.
my love to you and to Dario and to the dog. And
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry who was
yeah,
strutting in the back.
where can everybody follow you guys and follow your work? Can we drop the socials there?
Yeah, all of our socials are 77, the number 77, Flavors Shy, CHI. And for the podcast, it's 77 Flavors of Chicago, anywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube.
Awesome. Check these guys out. They're doing great work. They're on a mission from God, like the Blues Brothers
I have an
said.
agenda.
Yes,
My agenda is
absolutely.
to prove that Chicago is without Chicago, none of the other cities would be shit. That's my agenda.
Right. Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, take care, Sarah, and thank you all for watching. If you liked this episode, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.